Welcome back to the Deep Dive. So today our mission is kind of breaking down the whole world of hunting seasons, the laws, and importantly, the ethical side of things. We've pulled together a bunch of sources, guides, best practices, basically, to give you the key facts and point you to the resources you need to get up to speed fast.
And yeah, if there's one thing that jumps out from all that material, it's that the rules for hunting legally and ethically are, well, they're pretty strict. And it gets complicated because these regulations aren't just national or even statewide sometimes. They can be super specific to certain areas.
Right, which brings us straight to maybe the biggest hurdle for anyone starting out or even, experienced folks moving somewhere new.
Yeah.
That's figuring out the line between just following the law and actually being ethical. Okay, let's unpack this.
And that difference, it's really the foundation of hunting responsibly. The community expects it. The law, you see, that's like the absolute minimum. Season dates, bag limits, licenses, you break those, you're in trouble. Simple as that.
But the ethics, that's different. That's more about the sport's reputation, respecting the animals. It's policed more by, peer pressure.
Exactly. It's all about how prepared you are and, crucially, about minimizing suffering. Our sources gave a really good example of this. It might be perfectly legal, hunting season's open, you've got your tag, you're in the right spot.
Okay.
But let's say you didn't take the time to sight in your rifle, you haven't checked if it's actually accurate. Taking that shot, universally considered unethical in the hunting community.
Huh. That's interesting because the law probably doesn't ask, did you zero your scope this morning?
Nope, not
Yeah.
usually.
Yeah.
But the community sees that lack of prep as, well, negligent. Unacceptable.
It goes back to that idea of fair chase, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Respecting the animal enough to be skilled and ready.
Precisely. Making a clean, quick harvest. Which is why step one for being both legal and ethical is always preparation. And that prep starts with getting the right info, the current info.
Which leads us to the resource mentioned over and over again, the State Game Agency website. Not some random forum, not what your buddy did 3 years ago.
That's the gold standard. Seriously, those official websites, that's where you find the real deal. Fair chase rules for where you'll be, the super detailed rules for each species, and of course, how to get your license and tags. It all comes from there.
Okay, so we know where to look. Now, let's tackle when you can hunt. Let's decode these seasons. We know the dates are usually around the same time each year, but the sources were really clear. They're set annually. You've got to check every single year.
Yeah, don't assume. Things can change. Maybe a tough winter hit the population, or there's a new management plan. Always check the latest calendar. And how they structure those calendars, it really reflects the goal of conservation. It varies a lot depending on the animal.
Right, you mentioned it's kind of a spectrum.
Exactly. So on one end, you've got your smaller game animals. Things like squirrels, rabbits.
And the more common stuff.
Yeah, populations are usually healthy, pretty stable, so their seasons tend to be really long. Like the sources said, sometimes starting late summer, going right through until late winter. Lots of opportunity there.
But then you shift to big game deer, elk, bear, and suddenly it gets way more specific.
Oh, definitely. Take deer hunting. It's usually very detailed, often focused around the fall rut, the mating season. So it'll kick off in early fall, maybe run into January sometimes, but it really depends on what that specific state needs to manage its herd.
And it's not just about the dates, is it? It's also about how you hunt.
Yeah.
The method matters.
Big time. Seasons are often broken down by the weapon you're allowed to use. That's key for managing hunter numbers and safety.
Yeah, that's what I found really interesting. It's not just deer season. It's rifle season, bow season, shotgun season, even muzzleloader season, each with its own dates.
Exactly. And there's a reason for splitting them up like that. It helps control the harvest. Think about rifle season. That's usually the most popular, right? Rifles are efficient, long range. So to avoid over-harvesting, they often make that season shorter, manage the impact.
Okay, that makes sense. And then bow season usually starts way earlier.
Right. Sometimes weeks, even months before firearms. Archery is harder. You need to get closer, success rates are lower. So the state can allow a longer season without worrying so much about taking too many animals. Plus, it's quieter early on.
Doesn't spook the game as much before the main event, maybe.
Sort of, yeah. And then you have shotgun and muzzleloader seasons. What about those?
They often slot in around the rifle season or sometimes are specific to certain areas.
Exactly. Shotgun season is often a safety thing. In places with more people, more houses, you don't want high-powered rifle bullets traveling long distances. Shotgun slugs have a shorter range.
Okay. Safety measure.
Yeah. And muzzleloader season, that often has a couple of roles. Muzzleloaders are, primitive, slow to load, shorter range, kind of like bangs in a way.
More challenging.
So regulators might put a muzzleloader season early, or maybe late, like in January after the main rifle rush is over. It gives hunters using those traditional methods a chance when there's less pressure, and it can help the state meet specific harvest goals, maybe for does late in the year, in a less intense way.
Wow. It's like a really finely tuned machine managing safety, opportunity, and the animal population.
It really is. And this hammers home the point about local rules. The source specifically called out Indiana versus Illinois.
Yeah, how they could be totally different, even if you're right near the border.
Totally. You could live practically on the state line, but step across it and boom, different season dates, different weapon rules, maybe different rules about antlers or no antlers. Indiana's Department of Natural Resources has its own goals, totally separate from Illinois'. Your homework starts the second you decide where you're hunting.
Okay, so timing and method are locked down by these state rules. Let's talk about getting the actual permission slip, the licenses and tags. This is where the money comes in, right?
Yeah, this is largely how conservation efforts get funded. Wildlife management, enforcement, $100 pay for a lot of it. And the source is confirmed, getting the basic license. Usually pretty straightforward.
Designed to be easy, it sounds like. State website, big stores like Walmart or Cabela's.
Yep, pretty accessible for that general annual license. But then you need the specific tags or permits for the actual animals you want to hunt. And this is where conservation gets really visible, through two main types of tags.
Right. First, the easy ones, over the counter.
Correct. Over-the-counter OTC tags. You just buy them, walk in, walk out, or click online. They're for animals where the population is doing well, it's abundant. The state actually wants a decent harvest to keep things in balance. Common species, basically.
Like managing inventory.
Yeah.
And then the other kind, draw tags. Sounds more complicated.
It is, requires applying, often waiting. What's fascinating here is why draw tags exist. They're all about managing scarcity. If an animal is really sought after, like a big bull elk in a prime unit, or maybe its numbers are lower in a specific area.
The state can't just let everyone hunt them.
Exactly. It becomes a quota system. Let's say the habitat can only sustainably support harvesting 50 moose in a particular zone. The state will issue exactly 50 tags for that zone, usually through a lottery, a random draw. It guarantees hunting pressure doesn't wipe out the local population.
So if you're putting in for a draw, you know you're after something where demand outstrips supply. Conservation is actively limiting the take.
That's it, precisely. It's Resource Management 101. And speaking of specific requirements, we should mention migratory birds too. Geese, ducks.
Ah, yeah, the source mentioned the duck stamp. That's an extra thing.
Yep. On top of your regular state hunting license, you need this federal stamp, the Federal Migratory Bird Hunting and Conservation Stamp. You buy it annually.
And that money goes somewhere specific.
Directly into conserving wetlands, buying land, restoring habitats, which helps way more than just ducks. It's a fantastic example of hunters directly funding the habitat their quarry depends on.
Connects the purchase you make at the post office or wherever directly to the birds thriving.
That's the big idea behind all these rules and regs. They can seem like a hassle, you know? Checking dates, filling forms.
Feels like bureaucracy sometimes.
But the sources really stress how vital they are. They're there for the good of the wildlife and the hunting community itself.
How so?
Well, first, they directly support wildlife conservation, healthy animal populations for the long haul. Second, they push for ethical hunting, responsible treatment of animals that maintains community standards, reduces waste.
And third,
Keeps the hunting community healthy and, frankly, socially acceptable, ensures it has a future.
so preparation. Knowing the rules for your specific spot. It's non-negotiable.
Absolutely. If you go into it understanding it's tightly regulated, both by law and by ethical expectations, you're starting off right.
So what does this all mean for you listening to this, trying to figure it all out? It means being a successful, responsible hunter starts way before the hunt itself. It starts with understanding the system, the seasons, the tags, the methods, because that whole system is built on conserving the resource.
Right. And maybe the final thought is this. These rules aren't just random hoops to jump through. They're a framework, a legal framework built to manage limited resources, enforce community ethics, and pay for conservation. And that ethical line where the law stops but community expectation keeps going, that's where true responsibility really shows itself.
Absolutely. And the best place to start figuring all this out for where you plan to hunt, always check your state game agency's official website. That's your launch pad.